Elvenhome, and to this, the monthly update, where I just pick up on some things that I've been doing in addition to the main work which you've seen in the past couple of videos. It also includes the review or a brief description of the gimbal and how I use that to get starting to get shots of engines and things, which I had the most hilarious time trying to do because I couldn't get it right. And right at the end of this month's episode are some of the outtakes from me trying to get the bit on the gimbal right. And then there's also a section where I pick up from the many comments that I had last time round about the gardens, and in particular around the washing line and how to stop the area outside the church looking as if it falls off the end of the world. And that's the next section that we'll come to. And there are also a couple of bits. Then immediately after this, I've put the train cam on an engine going up the incline along the newly laid part of track, so you can get a view of what that now looks like. So let's get on with the video. I hope you enjoy it. Please do, if you've got any comments on the video, please do put them in. I really enjoy getting those, and they've helped me tremendously with a couple of changes on the gardens, as you'll see when we move to the next section. So speak to you again in a minute after you've had a little trip up from Grey Havens to Sharky's End. Okay, in this section I just want to show you a couple of pieces of work that I did following the last video and the comments that were made. RWS Baden Rich, I think, suggested putting some grass from the edge of the vicar's property up to the wall of the churchyard. And I did think about putting grass on, but as you'll see in the end I went for putting underbrush there, really as a kind of hedge that just, but not a nice kempt hedge that's as you would have where the gardener has been at it, but more the kind of thing that would be a field boundary, because I imagine the other side of all of this, it goes into open fields, if you could see the other side of the back scene. So I'm grateful for that idea. It has closed that off really rather nicely. It doesn't look as though it goes the end of the world where they sort of drop off if they don't manage to stop in time. And Barry Smith suggested that in relation to the washing lines, I put some extruded sprue, which was an excellent idea, but I happen to have some very thin strips of evergreen styrene, plastic styrene, which are 1/4 millimeter thick, being 3/4 millimeter wide. So from the top, they still look a little bit thick, but the beauty of them is that from the side on, you can hardly see them, which is what you would expect with a washing line if that was accurate. So I'm grateful for those ideas. Thank you very much. It is why I say I like comments, because it's always helpful to get another view of things, and those changes have been done. At this point, I'll put up a short clip that I made when I had this top section off while I was doing the work on the underbrush. I also had the church, once again, the lights, the LED that's in there, just stopped working, which is rather annoying in a way. So I had to feed a new LED from underneath. I didn't want to lift the church off again because that was quite disruptive last time. So I now have a very bright light inside the church. And at some point, I think what I'll do is put another resistor in to try and dim it down a bit, or maybe even fit a dimmer switch just to take the light off, because it is really very bright. But then there are a load of bright souls that go in there. And you will have seen at that point the clip that I took moving down along this whole section. looking from the side that you can't normally see, which is the back scene. And I was really quite pleased with that outcome, and I think the whole thing looks rather nice and has come together well. So we'll move on to the next section where I talk about the gimbal, which took some recording, as I'll explain when we get to that section. So speak to you again in just a moment. Okay, in this section I'm going to talk about the gimbal, which I promised to do some episodes ago. And as I get more used to using it, and I've been using it to take images of the trains moving, because it really helps me with getting up close to them and following along with them, and that being a more even route than I can do if I'm holding it by hand, and also allows me to get closer than being on the tripod where it's very fixed. This isn't a full review of this gimbal, the Osmo Mobile 2, because it can do a lot more than I need it to do, although I'd like to try some of the other stuff out at some point. I'll put a link in at this point on the screen, and also down in the notes below, to an online review which I watched, which was very helpful for me before I decided to buy this. And that shows you rather more what it can do than I can do in this thing here. The phone that's sitting in there, my iPhone that's sitting in there, and the gimbal communicate through Bluetooth. There's an app that sits on the phone. The controls are all, let's get this done, there we go. The controls are all in the handle. You've got this button which turns it on and off, this button that controls both pan and tilt, and then this red button which controls the camera by switching it on and off. And on the side here you have the zoom, which is, if you're right-handed, is right under your thumb. I mean, I'm holding this in my right hand, I'm left-handed, and so that can be a little bit more awkward trying to use that, but nothing too horrible. So if I turn it on, it should stand to attention. Let's see if we can get it to stand to attention. As it comes on, it stands to attention. There we go. Right. And then if I can get the screen to come back up on my camera, I set the app going, and it comes. I really must. It keeps telling me that I need training. It didn't used to tell me that, but obviously I'm not using it properly. So now, if I turn this round, you will see that I have. There we go. That's me. The camera is now working, and what I can then do is just start filming. So I just have to press the red button, and as I'm moving around, you'll see that it's trying to keep the camera as steady as possible. I don't know if you can, if I come into the shot better, there we go. You'll see how much I have to tilt it quite a lot before it throws itself out. But the good thing is that I can control fairly smoothly pan and tilt actions. So if I want the camera to look up, I just have to press this up, and you'll see the camera starting to rotate to take the lens up, looking up. When I first got this, I found that really hard to get my hand around, because as you're looking at it, it sort of tips towards you as if it's looking down. And of course the camera's on the back, not the front, and the one at the back is the one that you're worried about. And then similarly, this one here allows you to pan left and right, and all of that makes a much smoother transition as you're carrying it round. And because this is quite light, what I tend to do is to take the camera through quite an angle like that, and then I'm able to hold it at arm's length, there we go, and still get the images that I want, and that's going to allow me to move smoothly, and the camera is keeping as steady as it can, where I've got it set for both the angle of tilt and also the direction of the pan. So I've been finding this really quite useful. It's about 130 quid, I think. It was when I bought it anyway. It may be cheaper now. And I'm really pleased with it. The only thing that I find a little bit disconcerting is that the app records the images. And now the good thing about that is that you can go through all the recordings you've done and only save to your phone those things that you really want, and then it puts them into the iPhoto library and syncs them to the iCloud. That can take quite a while if you're doing a very long, and anything over about 5 minutes, it can take quite a time. But that's a minor thing, and it does allow you to get rid of images pretty quickly that you don't really need. But all in all, I'm pretty pleased with this. I'm even more pleased that I've got to the end of this, because I've tried to record this section so many times, and what I'll do at the end, because I've seen some of the outtakes already, is I'll string together a few of them right at the end of this episode, just for any of you that struggle over not getting things perfectly right. I mean, this has just been a nightmare. Anyway, that's my look at this gimbal. As I said, there's a really good review of it which I'll link you to, so you can see everything that it can do. It's really quite a powerful piece of kit, and certainly if you're filming outside as well, a very useful thing to have, to be able to take images if you're walking along anywhere and smooth out the bumps as you're walking along. So I'll stop this bit now before I get it wrong, and come back to the next section in just a moment. Speak to you then. Okay, well in this section I want to take you through various bits and pieces that I've been doing in addition to doing the main scenic work that you've seen over the last couple of videos, and also to talk about what the next things are that I need to be doing, which will include ballasting. In front of you, you can see just above the plug my new programming track. The GaugeMaster Prodigy Advance has a specific set of terminals for programming, and I've been dicing with death really by programming on the main track, and that's worked all right so far, but you really don't want to be doing too much programming on the main track, just so that you don't inadvertently send signals to all your engines and start causing yourself problems. When I wired this up, I didn't realize that you can't, on the programming track, you can't actually run engines. All you can do is program them, which actually, if you think about it, makes absolute sense. So the way I wired this up was to take from the terminals on the back of the Prodigy, and then they go into two of these type chop blocks, which are the plug and socket type, which clip together under the programming track, so that I wanted, if I needed to be able to take this off if I'm separating the baseboards at any time, without it causing too much of a problem. So what I'll do is run another pair of leads from the bus, again to a set of plugs, and then I can just unplug the programming track, plug in the main track, and then use it for running in engines, and if I'm working on an engine, just want to be able to see if it's working okay. So that's quite good. At the back, you may see that the fencing has now been fully done. That's the full length of the fencing that will separate the MPD from the street, and I'm quite pleased with that. I managed to mix the colour for the stonework accurate for most of it. You may remember that on this far piece in the corner there, at the top end, I'd repainted it at some point and hadn't quite got the mix right, but I've gone back and put that right too. But when I put that on the board, you'll see it's all sitting flat now. It wasn't. The new longest piece was sticking up in the air because there was a bow on the board, which I always knew was there. And I've needed to do something about that. So partly that chop block connector block that's there is holding the front of the board down, and that's also rather useful for keeping the board absolutely still. It won't move at all. But the bow was still in the center, so I'm not sure whether you'll be able to see this, but underneath that building, let's see if I come in a bit, it's about maximum zoom, there is now a great big screw going right the way through and holding the board into the, bringing it down, and that's made it all level. And all the points still work, so I've not caused any problem with that. I think that will help some of the running actually, because it will mean now that the track is more level as it runs through there. The next piece of work, moving on to next steps, I mentioned ballasting, and I also mentioned that I was going to be using Ballast Magic. If I zoom back out again so you can get a better view. So I've done my first test piece, which I said that I would do. The Ballast Magic is a white powder which you mix, and depending on how strong a bond you want, depends the ratio. In this bottle you can probably just see some ballast and some of the white powder from when I did my practice. And here, if I bring it in front of you, is a piece of track which has been ballasted, and that ballast is really very firm. And all you do is you mix the powder with the ballast in whatever ratio you think you need. I've gone 5:1, which is the minimum, the maximum, come to think about it, because they say anywhere between 5:1 and 10:1, and that all depends how strong a bond you want. And then you just spray it with a mist bottle so that it's wet but not soaking, and then you leave it, and after about a couple of hours it's dry, but 24 hours is what they suggest for most, and I'm really pleased with that. And that's encouraged me, because I wasn't too keen with all the, especially with the way I've built things, having so much liquid floating around the system. So the incline is the first bit that will get ballasted. I'm working on the back to front principle, so I'll want to think about more of the scenics and where they're going to go. But I think I really can get on and certainly do the incline itself. And I think it also, the Ballast Magic will make doing the points easier. That does worry me, doing the points and getting glue and gunge into things. Whereas with the Ballast Magic, there's no glue or gunge to get in there, as long as you keep it free of the ballast itself, which you would do anyway to make sure that the thing's working properly. I'm also going to be doing, again on this back to front principle, I'd thought at first that the whole of that curve now, which I'd painted brown, would become a rock face. But I've decided against that. The clearances at some parts, particularly where it comes off the bridge here and starts just after it passes the double slip on the outside track, is really quite close, and I wouldn't be able to do too much in the way of scenic work. So the answer, I think, is a wall. So I hope for the next video you'll see that I'll have put the wall in, and I need to put the wall in so that I can do the ballasting. So all of that is probably next week's work, and I hope by the time I next come back to you in about a fortnight's time that I'll be able to show you my first bit of ballasting, which will be jolly good. I think that's pretty much everything that I've got for you by way of the update. I think the ballasting is going to make a huge difference, even on that one little section of track. It's astounding. The only other thing I've got to work out is how I'm actually going to paint the track, because I'm not that keen on spray. Again, I'm in a room in the flat, so I think I'm going to have to paint it, and I just need to get the paints to do that. But I don't need to hold off doing the ballasting while I secure those sorts of things. Well, that just about wraps it up for this month's Elvenhome. Thank you to all my subscribers. I'm up to about 960 now, which is amazing, and I'm very grateful to you all. And if you haven't subscribed, well, please do. It'd be lovely to have you along, and hit the bell notification next to the subscribe button so that you know when my videos are uploaded. If you like the video, please hit the like button. That all helps, and share it indeed, all the more so. So until we speak again in about a fortnight's time, that's goodbye from Elvenhome. Bye-bye. And I haven't actually got it fully working at the moment, so it's not doing the job. I was doing a pretty good job. Gosh, what a load of rubbish. Turning. And in fact now, if I turn the handle round, it takes something to actually make it move. It moves very slowly. So, this is rubbish. I've had complete rubbish. I promised in an earlier video, but I'm trying to frighten the life out of them. As I'm talking now, I'll show you the image that this is producing as I'm doing this. So oh God.